Part 48. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 471. Chapter 471. The daughter who married into a wealthy family. He remembered that Grandma Ye in the countryside had loved Xiao Ling since she was a child. When he heard that she had given birth to a son, he had long wanted to see her. However, because she couldn't contact Xiao Ling and heard in the news that she had a difficult time giving birth, she had been taking care of herself, so she didn't add any trouble. So the couple called their hometown in the countryside. When Grandma Ye heard their invitation, she became excited and asked, "Is Xiao Ling's health better and can we receive guests? Will it be inconvenient for us to go there?" Father Ye hesitated. "Actually, we haven't met Xiao Ling yet. We don't know how she is doing recently. I just thought that she has always been very filial to you. Maybe she can let us meet her once you go." Aunt Lu heard that something was getting more and more wrong as he talked, and she quickly grabbed the phone. "Mom, don't listen to Lao Ye's nonsense. We have already said hello to Xiao Ling, so feel free to come and you will definitely see her." Although Grandma Ye can't see, her mind is very clear. She heard the contradiction in their words and couldn't help but worry about Xiao Ling's condition. Why, even her mother's family can't see her? Is she okay at her husband's house? Is she still weak? How is the child? Is there any hidden secret in the middle? It seems that these problems can only be clarified by going there in person. So Grandma Ye asked people to pack their luggage overnight and go into the city. On this day, Joe's mother went out to buy groceries and met Aunt Lu again. Behind Aunt Lu, there was a timid middle-aged man supporting a blind old woman. Joe's mother frowned, remembering that Madam had told her not to get involved with the Ye family, so she took a step around, wanting to turn a blind eye and walk away. Unexpectedly, Aunt Lu refused to let her go and stopped her. Aunt Lu said with a smile, "Hey, Joe Ma, why don't you recognize me after not seeing me for a few days?" Seeing that she couldn't avoid it, Joe's mother had to say, "Isn't this Aunt Lu? What's the matter?" "It's really something," Aunt Lu said. "Come, let's all get to know each other. Mother Joe, this is our old lady, Xiao Ling's grandmother. The old lady wants to see her great-grandson. Mother Joe, you just for convenience, go and talk to Xiao Ling." Zhou Ma Wenfengjing said, "Madam, I told you last time that if I don't see you, I will send money to the Ye family on time." Grandma Ye was clear in her heart. She saw that Zhou Ma's tone was quite respectful to Xiao Ling, but she was very disdainful towards Aunt Lu, so she understood, Aunt Lu must have been blackmailing Xiao Ling's money every 2 days, so Xiao Ling didn't see anyone. Wealth attracts people's attention. Since Xiao Ling has paid regularly, there is nothing wrong with avoiding it. After all, Xiao Ling and her incompetent parents have not been close since childhood. When she was a child, Aunt Lu often bullied her. It was common for her not to have enough to eat or wear, and to be beaten and scolded at every turn. She had been living a very hard life at home, but now that she was able to send money regularly, she had not forgotten her roots and was extremely benevolent. Grandma Ye scolded Father Ye and Aunt Lu in her heart for not living up to expectations and being embarrassed. However, she really wanted to see her granddaughter and great-grandson, so she took a few steps forward and politely said to Joe's mother, "Sister, please do me a favor and go back and tell your wife that I am here. She was brought up by me. She has been close to my grandmother since she was a child. She would be willing to meet her if she knew I would come." Joe's mother hesitated for a moment when she saw that the blind old lady spoke clearly and logically and did not look like the kind of person who was messy. The last time Aunt Lu came to look for her, she really didn't see this old lady. Maybe she really wanted to meet her. So she agreed to report it again. Joe's mother bought groceries and returned to the villa. She found Xiao Ling and told her about Grandma Ye. Xiao Ling didn't expect that it was Grandma Ye who came. I haven't seen Grandma yet since we parted ways in the countryside 2 years ago, and I still really miss her. In the past 2 years, too many things have happened. Now when I think of that kind old man, it feels a bit like the changes in the world. Then let's meet, Xiaoling said. Grandma's legs and feet are inconvenient and her eyesight can't be used, so she asked my dad and Aunt Lu to come with her. No matter how snobbish the couple is, they are still son and daughter-in-law. In my impression, at least, ability to maintain a superficial sense of filial piety towards elders. With them taking care of her, she felt more at ease. Joe's mother responded and asked, "Madam, do you want to say hello to Sir?" If she didn't say it, Xiaoling almost forgot that although the current villa was her and Pei Xian's home, only Pei Xian was the real owner. No matter what she wanted to do, she had to go through him. Allow. So, Xiaoling said, "I will tell Pei Xian." At dinner, she indeed told Pei Xian about the visitor at home. Pei Xian was not very happy. "It's not your real family, what's there to socialize with?" "It's not about socializing," Xiaoling said, "I miss Grandma." Pei Xian glanced at her in surprise. It was rare to hear that she missed someone. It seemed that the old lady held a lot of weight in her heart. She has always been a person who values family affection, which can be seen from her previous attitude towards Xiaoyu. Now, since she likes it, let's meet him. So Pei Xian agreed to entertain her family and her family at home. However, he himself was not interested in this matter. "Pick a time when I'm not at home." Xiaoling knew that he didn't like to make noise, so she agreed. Afterwards, Joe's mother learned about this arrangement, but she didn't agree with it. She went to Pei Xian privately and said, "Sir, if you avoid seeing Madam's mother-in-law's family for the first time, they will think you don't show respect to Madam." Pei Xian said calmly, "That's nonsense. The group of people came to see the baby, and they were not his son. Do they need him to pretend that the family of three is happy? What a joke." So, this topic was stopped. Choosing a day with good weather, Xiaoling asked Joe's mother to invite the Ye family to come. As expected, the Ye family came, all dressed in their best clothes. Grandma Ye was wearing a suching old cotton tunic with floral buttons, and Father Ye was wearing a suit. It is said that suits are the most distinguishing clothing among men. Sure enough, this kind of clothing was well dressed and handsome when worn on people like Pei Xian and Li Lei. However, when worn on Father Ye, it couldn't show off his imposing manner and only looked timid and funny. But this is all good for him. The most exaggerated one is Aunt Lu, who has permed her hair and wears a printed coat and a long woolen skirt of the same color. She is covered in gold and silver. She wants to wear all the valuable things in the house. Stepping into such a luxurious villa for the first time, Aunt Lu was as excited as Grandma Lu entering the Grand View Garden. She looked around and exclaimed from time to time, "Wow, the door is actually made of relief, it must be worth a lot of money, right? What kind of wood is that cabinet over there made of? It's also very expensive, right?" End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 472. Chapter 472 Visiting the Baby. Aunt Lu touched here and there, and the word money was inseparable from her 3 sentences. Xiaoling had a headache due to the noise and ignored her. She helped Grandma Ye walk in front and said, "Grandma, how are you doing recently? I miss you very much." "Grandma misses you too." Grandma Ye smiled kindly, took Xiaoling's hand and said, "Little girl, are you exhausted from being outside these 2 years? Have you suffered a lot?" Although she is very long, I haven't seen my granddaughter in time, but I have been paying attention to the news reports about her. I know that she was with Tianyi's boss Li Lei, was dumped and broke up with her, made a variety show, released an album, changed her agency, and later became pregnant. The child of Emperor Pei Dong was married to his son. So many things have happened in just 2 years. You can imagine the ups and downs she has experienced. Xiaoling felt her nose was a little sore. Others only saw the glamorous side of her, and they were all jealous of her marrying well. They secretly talked about what tricks she had used and what kind of bad luck she had, to be treated like Paizian. Favored by men. Only she herself knows how much blood, tears, and unwillingness there is in it. No one understood her, only the kind old woman in front of her could express the pain in her heart with one word. Xiaoling sniffed and hid the weakness in her tone. She just smiled and said, "How can it be so hard? I have been very prosperous in the past 2 years. I have a successful career and a happy family. Many people can't envy me." Grandma Ye smiled, knowing that what she said was not entirely true, but she stopped asking further. This little girl doesn't even know how to cover up the lies she tells. How can she live a good life? Whether a woman is living well or not depends not on what she says, but on her body and complexion. But what about Xiaoling? Grandma Ye touched her hand and found that it was so thin that it was just skin and bones. It was obvious that she had not taken good care of her baby when she gave birth, and she did not sit properly during confinement. She is now a young mistress of a wealthy family. Logically speaking, she has no worries about food and clothing, and there are enough people to serve her. How can she sit in confinement like this? Grandma Ye slowly changed her mind. Today, her family came to visit, but Xiaoling's husband, the legendary Mr. Pei, did not show up. Does this mean that he does not care about her? That's why Xiaoling ruined her body and bones like this, and still had a forced smile on her face. Grandma Ye felt very distressed and said to Xiaoling, "You are so thin and you don't know how to take care of yourself. I say, Ling Yedu, if you have anything unhappy, just tell Grandma. Although Grandma has no knowledge, she can always if you can help, I will definitely help." Xiaoling was moved in her heart, but she said on the surface, "Grandma, I'm fine. I'm thin because the baby is so annoying. In fact, in addition to taking care of the baby every day, I just eat and sleep. After a while, I will gain weight." Grandma Ye's eyebrows relaxed a little. She asked Xiaoling, "Where is the baby? Please take it out and let Grandma see it." Xiaoling helped Grandma Ye sit down in the living room and asked the nanny to take the baby out. The swaddled baby is sleeping, with his eyes gently closed, his eyelashes soft and fine, his little mouth opening and closing, spitting out milk bubbles. Xiaoling wiped his mouth lovingly and motioned for the nanny to carry him to Grandma Ye. This child was really difficult to raise. As soon as he changed hands, he noticed the change in the environment, woke up, and started babbling. Xiaoling was helpless and said with some distress, "This child just loves to cry." She stretched out her hand, wanting to take the child from Grandma Ye's arms and comfort her herself. However, Grandma Ye didn't give in. She didn't know what method she used, but she shook the child seemingly casually, making a vague murmur. The child actually gradually calmed down and stopped crying and fussing. Xiaoling was amazed by what she saw. Even the nanny kept saying it was magical. The nanny said with admiration, "You still have a way, usually we have to coax the young master for a long time to calm him down." Grandma Ye touched the child carefully and said, "This child is probably born a little weak, his soul is not stable, and he is easily frightened. You take good care of him, and when he grows up, he will get better." There seemed to be a strange magic power in her voice, which made Xiaoling feel at ease as she had found her backbone. Originally, Zhou's mother could give Xiaoling this feeling. She was also an experienced expert in taking care of children. Unfortunately, the abortion pill incident during pregnancy made her still resent Zhou's mother and she could not trust Zhou's mother. Now, she lamented to Grandma Ye, "It's great to have you here. Originally, I was still thinking that this child loves to cry so much. Could there be some defect? The doctor didn't even check it out. She took a lot of antibiotics in the early stages of pregnancy, and she is still worried about it until now. Grandma Ye smiled and said, "What's the flaw?" Bah, 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 children's words are unbridled. In my opinion, some children are like this. They are weak, but they are rich and noble, and they can't bear it at a young age. If you dress him in more Beigia clothes and give him a cheaper nickname, he will be able to make a living. Beiji. Fengkun gave her a lot last time, and this time Grandma Ye came from the countryside and brought some too, which was enough for the child to wear for a long time. Xiaoling thanked Grandma Ye. Grandma Ye said, "Thank you for nothing, we are all one family." He asked again, "Have you given the child a name?" The speaker didn't mean to say it, but he hit on Xiaoling's problem. The child still doesn't have a name, and he just calls him baby, baby, baby every day. Even the outside media and fans are asking, "Why haven't you named the child yet?" Xiaoling was in trouble and couldn't tell her. Pei Xian didn't mention this matter, so she didn't dare to mention it. After all, she wasn't sure what Pei Xian was thinking, whether the child would take his father's or mother's surname. She might offend him and let him take his anger out on the child. "I haven't chosen a name yet," Xiaoling said softly. Grandma Ye frowned a little. "Why haven't you given a name yet? It's been almost 2 months. Xiaoling remained silent. Although Grandma Ye was blind, her heart was very clear. Thinking of Xiaoling, her own body was so weak and her children were not strong and healthy. There must be some hidden secret, so she did not continue to ask. She teased the child for a while. Although the baby loved to cry, he also loved to laugh. He danced and played in Grandma Ye's arms. Xiaoling sat with Grandma Ye for a while, chatting about household matters and coaxing the children. After a long time, over there, Zhou Ma took Father Ye and Aunt Lu to the living room. Zhou's mother was also impressed by Aunt Liu's wonderful talent and insisted on visiting the villa. Zhou's mother told her sternly that she could not visit the inside of the villa. So, Aunt Lu asked Ma Zhou to take the couple and walk around the beautiful red brick wall of the villa, greedily looking at all the nearby fountains, gardens, garages, etc. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 473. Chapter 473. No name given. Until she stepped into the living room, Aunt Lu still had more to say and kept chattering, "This villa is so luxurious. Only you and your wife live there, plus such a small baby. What a waste. Mom, don't you think so?" Aunt Lu asked Grandma Ye. Grandma Ye said, "It is true that even if the house is big, it needs to be popular, but you..." She originally wanted to say that although your family only has 3 people, you have many nannies and servants, so you don't have to worry about popularity. However, Aunt Lu directly interrupted Grandma Ye. "That's right, Xiaoling, I'm not telling you, why should such a big house be left deserted? It's empty anyway, why not let me? If you and your dad can live together, I can help you take care of the children." Xiaoling was stunned. She didn't expect that they would even dare to have this idea. Had it not been for the concern that Grandma Ye was also present, Xiaoling would have ordered her subordinates to drive them away. She looked very calm. "Pei Xian and I both like to be quiet. It's good like this now." "You think it's good, but the child is not good," Aunt Lu shouted. "Xiaoling, you are a mother now, why are you still so ignorant? There are few people in the house, so the child is not good. Feed him, look at your son, he's reduced to skin and bones by you, can he really survive?" "Shut up," Xiaoling suddenly raised her voice, startling everyone. Her face darkened. "Lu Zayadai, no matter what you say, I don't care about you, but if you absolutely shouldn't, you shouldn't curse my child." he is fine and will live a long life. If you dare to talk nonsense again, get out of here. Xiaoling has been a big star for 2 lifetimes. As long as she is willing to maintain her elegance and manners, she will never lose her composure no matter what the occasion. However, when the matter involves his son, it is different. That's her weakness, she doesn't mind defending her children like a shrew. She stared at Aunt Lu with a fierce expression. Aunt Lu had never seen her so fierce and was frightened for a moment. After a while, he muttered in a low voice, "Now that you are rich and your rich wife is great, you can just point at us and scold us." Xiaoling said, "Whatever you think, either shut up or get out." Xiaoling, Father Ye couldn't stand it anymore. "How could you treat your Aunt Lu like this?" It's no wonder that his wife said before that Xiaoling was becoming more and more unfilial. It was indeed true, she dared to offend her elders like this. With the support of Father Ye, Aunt Lu became bolder and started to act rudely. "Oh, why is my life so hard? I thought about how I worked so hard to bring you up back then, without any credit or hard work. Now yours, when your wings harden and you fly to high branches, you will learn to turn your back on others." Her voice was high-pitched, and she pretended to wipe away tears as she spoke, which was very lively. In Grandma Ye's arms, the baby was disturbed and started crying again. Xiaoling didn't have time to pay attention to Aunt Lu and hurriedly went to see the baby. She took it from Grandma Ye and coaxed it softly. Grandma Ye also lowered her face and said to Aunt Lu, "Lu Zayadai, do you know the etiquette of being a guest? If you continue to act bad here, we will say goodbye and leave now." She felt very embarrassed. In front of so many servants of the Pei family, had Aunt Lu ever considered Xiaoling's feelings? Xiaoling's body bones are so weak and her children are not strong. Moreover, with so many family members coming today, Pei Ziyan, the male host, did not show up. This situation was so abnormal that Grandma Ye had to think deeply. Xiaoling is not as happy as the outside world reports. There are still many hidden secrets in her marriage. Grandma Ye's biggest worry is that Pei Ziyan doesn't love her. A girl with no power and no background, who is alone and married into a rich family, how on earth can she live if she still does not get the favor of her husband? As for her natal family members, it's okay if they can't help. How can they hold her back, cause trouble for her, and make her husband's servants laugh? Thinking of this, Grandma Ye's face turned even more ugly, and she scolded Aunt Lu again. Aunt Lu originally came from a small family and lived far away from her elders. She usually closed the door and bossed her husband around, so she didn't think there was anything wrong with her actions. She didn't listen to Grandma Ye's advice, but said, "Mom, even you are following her? Don't you see it? She is just an unfaithful and unfilial girl. Now that she has money, she doesn't care about others. Come on. Are you flattering her and expecting her to give you more benefits?" The more she spoke, the more outrageous she became. The few servants of the Pei family next to her all lowered their eyebrows and acted as if they had heard or seen nothing, but they couldn't help but feel full of contempt for Aunt Lu in their hearts. Xiaoling had a headache from the noise, and said to Aunt Lu, "You either shut up, or I'll ask the security guards to drag you out." Her voice was not high, but it seemed to have an unquestionable meaning, making people believe her. No sooner said than done. Aunt Lu was frightened at this moment. Her purpose had not been achieved yet. She came here to make money today. How could she be kicked out before the money was made? She sized up the situation, quickly put away her rambunctious behavior, found herself a step, and smiled dryly. "Xiaoling, isn't Aunt Lu anxious? You haven't contacted your family for such a long time. I wonder if you have forgotten our mother-in-law's family, so you must not take it seriously." Xiaoling sneered lightly, lowered her head, and focused on coaxing the child, ignoring her. The baby's crying gradually stopped under the comfort of his mother. Xiaoling carefully handed him over to the nanny nearby and said, "There are many people here and the air is stuffy. Take the young master out for some fresh air. The nanny held the baby respectfully and retreated. Xiaoling then spoke to the three people in the living room. Grandma, it's rare for you to come over, so why not stay here for a while? This is my first child, I have no experience in taking care of children, and I can't rely on servants. If you are here, I can rest assured. Grandma Ye also wants to stay here to take care of her. The child is too thin and her life is too hard. However, she thought about Xiaoling's situation in the Pei family and asked, it's not impossible for Grandma to stay, but will Mr. Pei agree? Xiaoling said, he doesn't care much about these things. He just likes to be quiet. As long as you don't disturb him, it will be fine. In fact, Xiaoling had already considered it when she heard that Grandma Ye was coming, and asked Pei Ziyan to ask Grandma Ye to live directly. Pei Ziyan thought that it would be a good thing to have an elderly person living here who could take good care of Xiaoling's health, so he agreed. There is an Easter egg at 11:30. Add an additional chapter la la la. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 474. Chapter 474 Staying Overnight. Grandma Ye breathed a sigh of relief. It was not because she could live here, but because she found that Xiaoling's status in this family was not low, at least not as low as she had imagined before, so she felt relieved. She said, if you don't dislike me as a blind old woman, I will stay for a while, talk to you, and take care of the baby. She paused, smiled, and said, look at my uncle too. Pei Ziyan has nothing to look at. Xiaoling thought silently in her heart, but she also smiled on her face and ordered Zhou Ma to clean up the guest room. Aunt Lu on the side quit, Xiaoling, let me and your dad live in it too. Your grandma is old and has inconvenient legs and feet. It will be better if your dad and I take care of you. Besides, we can also take care of you. How can you, my grandson and your grandson, take care of this little baby? Although Xiaoling was pregnant and stupid, she was not stupid to this extent. It's not inconvenient for grandma to live here and have servants to take care of her. She said she was taking care of the child, but in fact it was just talking about giving orders to the servants and accompanying her. I have a chat, I don't need anyone else to take care of me. Aunt Lu was unhappy. Even if we don't take care of grandma, we still have to take care of the baby. Your father likes to kiss his grandson, doesn't he, Lao Ye? Grandson. Xiaoling corrected her coldly. The doctor said that babies are weak and don't like to be surrounded by too many people. Instead, they are noisy and suffocated. If you and my dad want to stay here, at least there will be room at home. There's no room for 3 more servants. So, Aunt Lu, I can only accept your and dad's kindness, please come back. After saying this, Grandma Ye nodded secretly. This Ling Yetu was submissive when she was a child. Unexpectedly, in the past few years, she has been wandering around the world and married into a wealthy family and became a wife. She has developed a strong voice in her speech. This is how a woman's family should be, so as not to suffer any disadvantages. Thinking about it this way, her expression became a little more loving. Aunt Lu was choked for a long time before she said, such a big house, if there are 5 more people, it will be crowded. She looked greedily at the sunny garden outside the window. This mansion, at least more than 3,000 square meters, now lives in this stinky girl's family of 3, including Grandma Ye, Mother Zhou, 3 nannies, 2 driver. It will be more than enough to add more people inside. She didn't know that she really couldn't live there anymore. Although this villa looks large, it has a large area used for entertainment, leisure, and landscape. When Xiaoling originally designed it, she only planned to live a life of 2 with Pei Ziyan. Pei Ziyan likes to be clean, so apart from the master bedroom, there is only 1 guest bedroom and a few servant rooms. There is not even a baby room, which was temporarily created after she became pregnant this time. Where can there be room for too many people? She said calmly, first, it's really crowded. Second, what if it's not crowded? I don't want you to live here. Thousands of reasons are not worth this reluctance. Aunt Lu turned pale with anger and felt that she had been humiliated. You stinky girl, you. Who are you calling a stinky girl? Xiaoling looked at her coldly. After lunch, you and Dad will go back together and get some small gifts. It will be considered as a worthwhile trip. Aunt Lu originally wanted to continue fighting with her, but when she heard that there was a small gift, her attitude immediately changed, and a smile spread across her old face. I knew that our Xiaoling is not heartless. What kind of gift is it? Before Xiaoling could say anything, Zhou's mother came over and said, Madam, lunch is ready. Xiaoling supported Grandma Ya and invited everyone to eat. Aunt Lu also followed, looking around. When I visited the outside of the villa before, I never saw the inside of the villa. When I looked at it now, I saw that it was indeed very exquisite, with luxurious and elegant decoration style, expensive wooden furniture and porcelain furnishings, and floor-to-ceiling glass on the entire wall, which was clear and clear. The water curtain, the small patio and corridor paved with red brick walls, as far as the eye can see are large tracts of cedar, plum blossoms, and ivy. At the beginning, Xiaoling designed this villa herself. She hired the world's top designers as consultants and cooperated with the best materials and construction teams. The effect was not to mention how beautiful and gorgeous it was, satisfying all romantic fantasies. Aunt Liu's eyes widened when she saw it, and she was even more eager to live here. She was thinking about how to get Xiaoling to relent along the way, and then she thought that since the stinky girl was determined to drive people away, she might as well delay the time until the legendary Mr. Pei came back. When Mr. Pei marries the stinky girl, he becomes his son-in-law. It is only natural that a son-in-law should satisfy his mother-in-law's requirements. The hot-headed Aunt Lu thought about it more and more, and the more she thought about it, the more she thought it was funny. She didn't use her brain to think about who had ordered Chu Chen to threaten them before. A group of people sat down in a restaurant. Ma Zhou and the nannies presented exquisite, beautiful, and delicious meals. Because they knew that the lady's natal family was here today, they all showed off their best skills, and the delicious dishes were full of color and fragrance, which made people want to eat. Xiaoling personally prepared dishes for Grandma Ya and served her meals. As soon as Grandma Ya tasted it, she knew that all these dishes were extraordinary, with the freshest ingredients and the best craftsmanship. It seemed that the servants in this villa did not show any slightness to Xiaoling's natal family. Xiaoling's status here should be very high, at least in line with the status that a matron should have. That's so strange. Xiaoling is a Cinderella born from a commoner. She suddenly married into a wealthy family and has to win the respect of the servants, unless her husband gives her enough status and face. In other words, Mr. Pei's attitude towards Xiaoling should not be bad, or even very good. In this case, why is Xiaoling so skinny? The child is also frail. What is the hidden secret in this? The more Grandma Ya thought about it, the more confused she became. Xiaoling didn't realize what she was thinking. She still laid out the dishes with a smile and took a few bites along with her. Over there, Aunt Lu ate heartily, feeling that her stomach was not enough. She should have known better than to have breakfast. Wouldn't it be nice to save her stomach for a big meal here? Yasin Ling, a stinky girl, didn't know how lucky she was to be able to marry into such a good family. She swallowed a mouthful of food hard and asked in a subtle way, Xiaoling, when will Mr. Pei come home? This is also common. In order to cultivate a relationship with her in this life, he tried his best to come home on time for dinner. However, he really liked to be clean. Knowing that there were so many people at home today, it was hard to say whether he would come back on time. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 475. Chapter 475 Where does the blessing come from? Aunt Lou felt that her answer was too perfunctory. How come you don't even know what time your husband comes home? Men, you should watch closely, especially a rich man like Pei Zion. Don't watch more closely. What should you do if you are kidnapped? Xiaoling, I'm not telling you, you should be more careful. She was not really worried about Xiaoling, but she hoped that Xiaoling would hold on to the big tree of the Pei family and bring more benefits to her mother's family. What if this silly girl doesn't know how to hold on tight and gets dumped? Xiaoling didn't care. If he could really run away with someone, she would be grateful. She ignored Aunt Lou and went to eat with Grandma Yet. Aunt Lou still needs further persuasion. Xiaoling was a little impatient, and coincidentally, the baby started crying again. Since Pei Zion was not at home, the nannies didn't have so many taboos and took the baby directly from the nursery to the dining room. Madam, the young master probably misses you again. Xiaoling sighed. This child seems to have been very insecure since he was born. As long as he cannot see his mother for a period of time, he will cry at the top of his voice. Xiaoling sometimes wonders, is it possible that even he knows that she is not Pei Zion's biological flesh and blood, so that's why she is so frightened? She put down the dishes and chopsticks and planned to reach out to hug the child. Unexpectedly, Aunt Lou sat outside the dining table, closer to the nanny, and took the child from the nanny first. I can also coax children, Aunt Lou said diligently. Let me come. It's not that she really likes this child, but that she has seen such a luxurious villa and eaten such delicious and precious dishes. She had long been reluctant to leave, and wanted to live here to help Xiaoling take care of the children, so, naturally you have to show some skills. She held the baby in her arms, shook it pretentiously a few times, and said, "Baby, don't cry, the tears are flowing out. Come, Grandma will wipe them for you." As she said this, she took her own use your sleeves to wipe the crystal tears on the baby's cheeks. The child's skin was tender, probably hurt by the rough fabric, and he cried louder. Xiaoling felt distressed and quickly snatched the child from her arms. "You didn't coax the child like this," she scolded Aunt Lou rudely. Seeing the faint red mark on her son's cheek, she took the small towel from the nanny's hand and wiped the baby gently. The baby's cries gradually subsided. "Are you going to hold anyone who wants to hold a child?" Xiaoling raised her head and scolded the nanny rudely. "Are there any rules? Next time, just pay and leave." The nanny was frightened. She rarely saw the lady looking so fierce, so she quickly responded submissively. Actually, in normal times, how could these professionally trained nannies from wealthy families let the young master be carried by others casually? But isn't Aunt Lou the madam's natal family? She is the young master's grandmother. Who would be on guard if she wants to hold a child? However, this Aunt Lou is really too careless. She actually wiped the young master's tears with her sleeve. What should I do if there are germs? It's not unreasonable for Madame to be so nervous. Aunt Lou felt very angry when she heard her criticizing Sephora Mulberry and Sephora Japonica. She just wanted to stay and asked for help from her, but she couldn't get angry. Her face turned green and white at times, which was extremely funny. Grandma Ye put down the bowl and chopsticks. "Ling Yetu, come here, give the baby to Grandma. You haven't finished eating yet. Eat a few mouthfuls quickly. Being hungry for a long time is not good for your stomach." Xiaoling has been taking care of Grandma Ye just now. When it comes to eating, Grandma Ye knows very well that she doesn't even care about what to eat. Hearing Grandma Ye say this, Xiaoling hesitated, "But, this child only recognizes me. This little ancestor is extremely difficult to feed. He only recognizes his mother's breathing and heartbeat. Sometimes he won't give face to anyone else." Grandma Ye said, "I'll give it a try." The old man has rich experience in raising children. He carefully took the child from Xiaoling's hands and coaxed her kindly. The little baby was sobbing at first. After a while, he seemed to be fascinated by this strange old woman. He stared at Grandma Ye without blinking. After a while, he seemed to feel relieved and didn't cry. "Stop making trouble." Several adults around me said it was magical. "You have a fate with this child," Joe's mother said with a smile. "He likes you." The nanny next to me was also very happy. "Yes, the young master has been really tormenting my wife during this period. Now that you are helping me take care of her, it can save my wife a lot of energy." Xiaoling was also very surprised and said that her grandma helped. Very busy. Making Grandma Ye very happy. The family had lunch happily. The nanny took the baby to bed. Xiaoling helped Grandma Ye go to the garden to eat and bask in the sun. Aunt Lu also dragged Father Ye and followed him shamelessly, determined to stay until Pei Ziyan returned home, and asked Pei Ziyan to stay and live. Xiaoling vaguely guessed what their intention was, but she didn't bother to pay attention. It would be weird if Pei Ziyan could agree to live with them, so don't be too whimsical. However, before Pei Ziyan could get home, something unexpected happened. The nanny hurriedly came to Xiaoling. "Madam, it's not good, the young master suddenly had a rash on his face, big and small. He reached out to scratch it, but now it's all on both hands. Any slight problem in a baby may be fatal." Xiaoling became nervous and hurriedly followed the nanny to see it. Sure enough, the baby in the cradle had no longer moist and smooth skin, and was covered in rashes all over his body and face. The rapidity of the outbreak was shocking. The baby cried loudly and hoarsely, making Xiaoling's heart clench. "What happened?" she asked angrily, but knowing that now was not the time to hold people accountable, she quickly picked up the baby in her arms and hurried out. "Tell the driver to prepare the car and go to the hospital." Grandma Ye also followed her into the car. "I am an old man who has had a few more years of food than you, and has experienced more things. Maybe I can be useful," she said. Xiaoling was very grateful and thanked Grandma Ye. Aunt Lu also squeezed forward. One more person, more help. In the chaos of war, Xiaoling couldn't think of chasing her, and the other servants didn't dare to do anything to the madam's natal family, so they just watched her follow. Aunt Lu was sitting in the back seat of the Rolls-Royce, stroking the leather seats with her hands, feeling extremely excited. She has never been in such a luxurious car, and she must show it off with her boss when she gets back. It would be better if there wasn't a sick child crying next to you. The dead child is so noisy. Aunt Lu cursed the child in her heart. Xiaoling was holding the baby in her arms, feeling worried. In the past, no matter how hard the baby cried, it would get better as long as she coaxed him for a while. But this time, no matter how gently she coaxed him, the baby cried hoarsely and couldn't calm down. He kept moving and wanted to go. Scratch your own skin. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 476. Chapter 476. The baby cries again. Xiaoling held the baby's hand gently but firmly to prevent him from hurting her. But he was extremely anxious. "Driver, drive faster." The driver drove the car very fast, and soon he arrived at the hospital. The doctor examined the baby and said, "It's an allergy. However, we're not sure what the allergen is yet. Has the baby eaten or come into contact with anything that he doesn't usually come into contact with recently?" Xiaoling frowned and thought for a while. "No." Joe's mother added next to her, "I'm always very careful when using new things for babies at home. I always let him eat a little bit or touch a little bit to make sure it's harmless before using them officially. Today, everything I give to the baby is I'm wearing the same old clothes that I've worn before, so there's something different." Joe's mother glanced at Xiaoling in embarrassment. Xiaoling suddenly realized that there was something different. Isn't it just that there were a few more guests at home today? Could it be said that the baby's allergies are related to them? It was about a child. Xiaoling's mind was spinning rapidly, filtering out all the possible details one by one. Suddenly, something came to her mind. Aunt Lu wiped the baby's face with her sleeve. Everyone turned their heads and looked at Aunt Lu. How can you blame me? Aunt Lu was confused. Xingling, you don't slander people like this. If something happened to your son, you blame it on me? Didn't I just wipe him? What's the matter? I used to rub Fifei like this before, and I didn't see Fifei being allergic. The doctor didn't listen to her yelling and just said, Madam, can you take off this coat and give it to us so that we can test the material? If the baby is really allergic to certain ingredients in the clothing, it's very dangerous and we have to identify the source of the allergen to prevent him from coming into contact with it next time. Why? Aunt Lu screamed, why do you think it was me who caused his allergies? Maybe something bad happened. Are you going to take it off? Xiaoling didn't have time to argue with her. When it comes to the child, she can transform into a female devil anytime, anywhere. If you don't take it off, don't blame me for being rude to you. She glared at Aunt Lu fiercely, making Aunt Lu scared. I don't know why, but Aunt Lu started to take off her coat honestly and handed it to the doctor. She had a feeling that if she didn't do what Xiaoling said, the consequences would be serious. The doctor got the coat and went for testing. Not long after, he came out and told them the test results. The allergen has been confirmed. It is the chemical fiber on this dress. I am afraid that the baby will not be able to come into contact with chemical fiber clothing in the future. What? Aunt Lu yelled, it's so funny. How can someone in this world be allergic to chemical fibers on clothes? Doctor, are you mistaken? If this child is really allergic to chemical fibers, why is he allergic to chemical fibers? It's okay to wear so many clothes, but am I allergic to just this one? Xiaoling and many people around her looked at her as if she were an idiot. This baby's swaddling clothes are made of pure cotton, with purely natural ingredients and do not contain any chemical fibers, the doctor said. I guess he has not been exposed to any chemical fibers when he is at home. Xiaoling nodded, we don't have chemical fiber fabrics at home. The Pei family has been a wealthy family for generations and is very particular about food and clothing. All the fabrics are the most comfortable. Even the uniforms worn by the servants are made of first-class pure natural materials. How can a baby come into contact with chemical fibers at home? It took 3 months before I discovered that he was allergic to chemical fibers. This is a disease of wealth, Grandma Ye comforted Xiaoling. Thankfully, I was born in a family like yours, you just need to pay attention to it, it's okay. Xiaoling still found it difficult. He is young now, so it is fine to stay at home. What should he do when he grows up and goes out? The whole world is made of chemical fiber fabrics. As she said that, she glanced at Aunt Lu. Aunt Lu jumped up when she saw her. What do you mean? Xiaoling said coldly, stay away from my baby from now on. The printed clothes Aunt Lu is wearing are not only very gaudy, but the materials used are not exquisite at all. I don't know where they were bought. At first glance, they are not high-end goods. On the other hand, Grandma Ye, although she came from the countryside, was wearing pure cotton clothes, clean and tidy. Aunt Lu felt deeply that she had been discriminated against and wanted to argue. Xiaoling had already turned around and told the driver, you go home first and tell the nanny that the baby is allergic to chemical fibers. Ask them to clean and disinfect the whole house. By the way, you are driving here in another car. The one just now Aunt Lu had been in the car, and there might still be chemical fibers on the seats. Aunt Lu received 10,000 points of damage again. Xingling, you look down on me, she screamed. I just looked down on you, how about it? Xiaoling has a bad temper to begin with. This woman in front of her has come to provoke her several times. harmed her children, and still refuses to admit it. How can Xiaoling have a good face? Don't even think about staying in my villa. Don't come here again. Thank you. Yasin Ling, I am your mother. You are disrespectful, Aunt Lu was hysterical. Xiaoling frowned and glanced at the driver. The driver is an old man who follows Pei Xian. How many winds and waves have he seen? At this time, Xiaoling understood with just one look and half-dragged Aunt Lu out of the hospital. Aunt Liu's plan to stay in the villa went bankrupt. The baby was treated in the hospital and given medicine. When Xiaoling hugged him and led Grandma Ya and her group back home, the entire villa had been disinfected. Pei Xian has also returned and is sitting in the living room drinking tea. Xiaoling paused slightly at the door. Pei Xian looked up and saw her and the old lady beside her. Under the soft light of the foyer, the blind old woman had a kind face, holding a bamboo cane and wearing plain and clean clothes. Pei Xian remembered that Xiaoling had said that she and her grandmother had a very good relationship. Although, he didn't know that she was just reincarnated, so how could she be related to the family of the original owner of the body? But since she likes it, let her go. Pei Xian put down the white porcelain teacup and said to Grandma Ya very gently, "You are welcome to come. Stay with Xiaoling for a few more days. If you need anything, just tell Ma Zhou." Grandma Ya can't see her eyes and can only hear his voice. Although Pei Xian's voice was gentle, there was a hint of majesty and strength in his tone that he had been in a position of power for a long time and could not resist. It must be very hard for Xiaoling to be with such a man. However, on the surface, Grandma Ya just smiled kindly and thanked Pei Xian. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 477. Chapter 477. Look at the child's face. The nanny at home came up and took the child from Xiaoling's hand. Xiaoling carefully warned them, "Don't let the baby come into contact with allergens. You should also be more careful when wearing clothes. I will buy a few sets of work clothes for you all." In fact, the work clothes of the Pei family are work clothes, but they are better than many clothes bought outside. The texture and style are first class, and they are very decent even for daily wear. The nanny smiled happily and thanked the madam. When Pei Xian just arrived home, he heard Zhou's mother talk about the baby's chemical fiber allergy, and he couldn't help but regret. Why didn't he insist on sending the baby away? As far as he knew, even among wealthy families, including Li Lei's, there was no such particularity. In many cases, artificial fabrics were mixed with natural fabrics. If it weren't for the Pei family, maybe the child would have died of allergies long ago. Obviously he is a bitch, but he has the problem of wealth. The child started to cry. Xiaoling hurriedly hugged him and coaxed him again and again. In a blink of an eye, she saw Pei Xian's gloomy expression. She was afraid that the child would disturb him, so she quickly hugged the child and took a few nannies to protect Grandma Ya. Baby room walk. After a while, Pei Xian was the only one left in the living room. Pei Xian drank tea slowly. Listening to the faint discussion about children upstairs, he suddenly felt that it was becoming less and less like he owned this family. Since the birth of the child, several more nannies have been added, and now there is a Grandma Ya. In addition to the original mother Zhou and the driver, they all focus on the child and ignore him as the male host. Pei Xian felt a little angry, but more importantly, he felt deserted and lonely. Zhou's mother came over and said to him respectfully, "Sir, dinner is ready. You can eat when Madam and Grandma Ya come downstairs after taking care of the baby. Now, even when to eat depends on the child's face." Pei Xian's mood became even more gloomy, and he said to Zhou's mother, "No wait, let's start dinner now." It was then that Zhou's mother realized that her husband was in a bad mood, and she didn't dare to say anything more. She quickly put the food on the table, served him alone, and finished the dinner in a deserted manner. Until Pei Ziyan finished his meal, Xiaoling and Grandma Ye did not show up. Pei Ziyan endured it for a while, but still asked, "Where are they?" Zhou's mother said, "Madam, they are still taking care of the baby. The baby has severe allergies today. He needs to be bathed, changed his dressing, and coaxed well, otherwise he will be scared and cry. Children have such privileges, no matter how much they torment others, it is only natural." Pei Ziyan's expression became even colder. On the one hand, Zhou's mother was thinking about the lady and the baby upstairs, and on the other hand, she was worried about her husband. She said cautiously, "After the lady has finished giving the medicine to the baby, may I ask her to come and sit with you for a while?" Pei Ziyan snorted coldly and went to the study without comment. Xiaoling and Grandma Ye struggled for a long time and finally managed to take care of the child. Then she remembered that she hadn't had dinner yet, and said to Grandma Ye with some embarrassment, "Grandma, I'm so sorry, you see I'm so busy that I've forgotten the time. You must be hungry, come on, let's go downstairs to have dinner." In the restaurant, the lighting is quiet, and several sets of white porcelain tableware are placed on the table with fine wood grain, giving off an elegant luster silently. The seats were empty and there was no one in sight. "Where is Pei Ziyan?" Xiaoling asked. Zhou's mother said, "Sir, you have already had dinner. He should be in the study at this time." She had already removed Pei Ziyan's bowls and chopsticks, replaced them with clean ones, and gave Xiaoling and Ye from the kitchen. A new dish that Grandma Murakami has never touched. Xiaoling didn't care and helped Grandma Ye to sit down and eat. But Grandma Ye was more cautious. This Mr. Pei, even if he knew about his son's allergies, he never cared about it from the beginning to the end, which was very unusual. This simply makes people wonder, is this child his biological child? Moreover, he didn't even wait for Xiaoling to join him for dinner. Isn't that too cold? Supposedly, this is his first wife and first son. How could this happen? After dinner, Grandma Ye said to Xiaoling, "Little girl Ling, come and chat with Grandma." Xiaoling smiled, helped her to the guest room, and sat on the bed obediently. Grandma Ye took her hand and asked, "How is your relationship with Mr. Pei?" Xiaoling was stunned when she was asked. Unexpectedly, Grandma Ye noticed that there was a problem between the two of them on the first day she came here. She replied softly, "The relationship is pretty good." Grandma Ye didn't believe it. "Don't lie to Grandma. If the relationship was really good, why would she be so cold to the child?" Xiaoling was speechless and racked her brains for a long time before reluctantly answering, "He is usually busy and tired from work, so how can he have time to take care of the children?" "Grandma, he is very good to the children. He invited 3 as a nanny, she never skimps on food and clothing." Grandma Ye laughed, "How much can a rich man like him deduct from a child?" "Xiaoling, this is not necessarily a sign of love for the child. Grandma is someone who has been there, so you don't have to hide it from her. Mr. Pei actually doesn't like this child very much." "Right." Seeing that she could no longer hide it, and not wanting Grandma Ye to worry, Xiaoling hesitated and said, "Actually, it's nothing. It's just that when the child was just born, he was a little weak, so he didn't like it very much." Grandma Ye disagreed, "This Mr. Pei is really serious. How can he dislike his own child?" Xiaoling smiled bitterly, "Grandma, it's really not a big deal. Even if the baby is a little weak, I will still take care of it. Plus there are so many servants, even if Pei Ziyan doesn't care about it, he can still live a good life." Grandma Ye shook her head and sighed, "You silly child, why are you so naive? A cold and unemotional family is easily broken, not to mention that their identities are so different. What should I do if there is a problem with the marriage in the future?" Grandma Ye said to Xiaoling in a serious voice, "My child, you have to manage this relationship well." Xiaoling nodded. "What I think of in my heart is another man, with eyes as bright and warm as the sun, and the way he thinks about him seems to make the whole world brighter. Lile, I wonder if you are okay now? If it were you, maybe, I could manage it with my heart. Xiaoling said good night to Grandma Ye with her heart in mind. Grandma Ye lived in this villa and gradually became familiar with the villa and the people inside. On this day, when she was passing by the baby's room with a cane, she suddenly heard the two nannies inside talking. Everyone, I'm sorry. When I woke up, I found that the chapters were out of order. In order to avoid paying for it again, I replaced the out-of-order chapters with content that should be read in order, that is, each chapter is one chapter ahead of time, that is to say, the previous chapter the content of a chapter has been updated. If you feel that the connection is not connected, you can go back to the previous chapter to refresh. The refresh method is to remove the book from the bookshelf and add it again. Then, the wrong chapter will be reposted at 8 a.m. in the evening and placed in the correct place. Order. Because the new content has been replaced in the old chapter, when you buy the new chapter at night, although someone may have read the chapter in the morning, the purchase is not repeated. The cheating system and the stupid yinging only I can think of this stupid method. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 478. Chapter 478. Who does the child look like? One of them said, this little baby is so beautiful. Another one said, isn't it true? Her eyes and mouth look just like my mother's. One said, the eyes are somewhat similar, but the mouths don't look much alike. Another said, the mouth doesn't look like Dad either. One was silent for a while and said, don't you think it's strange? Look carefully. There doesn't seem to be any part of this baby that looks like his father. The other one was a little surprised and looked at the baby carefully. When you say that, it's true. It's so strange. Tell me, could this child be? A man was so frightened that he quickly interrupted her. What are you talking about? It's normal for boys to be more like their mothers. Stop talking nonsense. Be careful if it reaches your husband's ears. It's easy to lose your job. The other one was too frightened to say anything nonsense. The two of them changed the subject and talked about something else. Grandma Ye was shocked, as if a bright lightning flashed across her heart, and she suddenly understood why Pei Xian was indifferent to the baby. It's possible that this child is not his at all. This is simply too terrible. What happened in the meantime that made Xiaoling take someone else's child to marry Pei Xian, and how could Pei Xian tolerate their mother and son by his side? Grandma Ye was thinking about it when suddenly she heard footsteps behind her, slightly heavy, like a man walking away. The driver couldn't enter the inner house, and the only man in the family was Pei Xian. Grandma Ye knew in her heart that Pei Xian must have heard the conversation between the two nannies. Grandma Ye thought for a while and followed the footsteps and walked out. On the terrace, the breeze was blowing, and there was the cool fragrance of plum blossoms in the air. Pei Xian lit a cigarette, looking lonely. Grandma Ye was blind. Following the smell of smoke, she called tentatively, "Sir, are you here?" Pei Xian turned around and saw her. Without saying a word, he put out the cigarette. It's not that he is afraid that Grandma Ye will find his traces, but that he grew up in a wealthy family and received a good education. Putting out cigarettes in front of women is already a kind of upbringing and instinct. Grandma Ye discovered his location based on this slight movement. Grandma Ye asked softly, "Mr. Pei, did you hear what I just said?" Pei Xian just looked at her coldly. Grandma Ye still said to the air, "Mr. Pei, I know you feel uncomfortable. Is it because what they said is true?" Pei Xian finally opened his mouth and said in a cold voice, "This is none of your business." Grandma Ye felt clear in her heart. It seemed that the baby was indeed not his biological child, and he probably knew it already. There was a bit of compassion in Grandma Ye's expression. "Sir, it's really not easy for you to raise this child. I didn't expect the truth to be like this. It's no wonder that you are a little cold towards their mother and son. Pei Zion was silent again. He looked at the blind old woman in front of him and wondered, should he drive her out? Grandma Ye has continued, Sir, I know that you must love Xiaoling very much. Originally, you were so cold to her, I thought you didn't love her. But now I know that this child is not your biological child, so you must have a very deep feeling for Xiaoling if you can tolerate her to this extent. Pei Zion's expression softened slightly. He did not expect Grandma Ye to say this to him. From a young age, no one dared to speak to him like this, and no one had ever understood or sympathized with how much pain he was carrying. Everyone looked up to him, worshipped him, and hated him, but no one knew the darkness behind the glory, which he faced alone. Even Xiaoling doesn't know. But the blind old woman in front of him spoke to him lovingly. Such tenderness made him a little unaccustomed. He said in a hoarse voice, It's not hard. There are just a few children at home, and it's not like we can't afford to raise them. The compassion in Grandma Ye's eyes became even stronger, and she said, Sir, how sad you must be when you know this. This is life, Xiaoling's life, and your life. Sir, although I don't know why did Xiaoling give birth to this child that does not belong to you. But I can see that she has been working very hard to live a good life with you. She has accepted her fate, and you have also accepted your fate. Since you have allowed this child to be raised at home, then, if you can't tolerate him, what else can you get except competing with yourself and being unhappy? Pei Zion snorted coldly, Happy? I've done my best to keep him alive. Do you want me to greet other men's children with a smile? But Grandma Ye said, You can't say that, sir. You and Xiaoling are hiding it from everyone because you want to hide the child's true life experience. From the moment this child was born, you have been raising him and taking care of her. When he grows up, he will only recognize you as his father. Absurd, Pei Zion said coldly. How could Li Lei's child be his child? Grandma Ye knows that aloof men like him are usually very stubborn. She hesitated for a moment and then said it another way, taking a step back, if Xiaoling gives birth to your real son in the future, he and this baby will be brothers. Brothers can take care of each other. Whatever happens in the future, we can also support each other. Sir, you are a person who does great things and know how important it is to have someone you can trust by your side. Why don't you leave a brother like this for your future son? I will treat my brother well. Pei Zion was silent for a long time, and then said to Grandma Ye, I don't want to hear this. Grandma Ye sighed, knowing that she could only persuade her to this point, so she turned around and walked back. After walking a few steps, she turned back and said, If the brothers start to fight against each other in the future, Xiaoling will be so sad. Pei Zion wanted to smoke again. He ignored Grandma Ye, turned around, and went downstairs from the other end of the terrace. In the small garden, Xiaoling was holding her baby in her arms and basking in the sun. The rash on the baby's body had subsided, revealing soft and smooth skin in the sun. The baby's smile is bright and pure, innocent and innocent. Pei Zion looked at them from a distance. Xiaoling inadvertently raised her head and saw Pei Zion. His expression, which was originally smiling when teasing the baby, suddenly stiffened. Alertly hold the child closer to your arms. The two looked at each other for a long time across the garden. The child in her arms began to cry. Xiaoling then realized that she was holding the child too tightly, so she quickly relaxed her grip and coaxed him carefully and gently. The baby was still crying. The nanny came over, took the baby from Xiaoling's arms, and said to the baby, Be good, don't cry. Come and play with Auntie. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xiaowaning. Chapter 479. Chapter 479, Touching a Child for the First Time. The baby was lifted high by the nanny, and his cries subsided slightly. However, as soon as I put it down, I cried heartbrokenly again. Pei Xian was also convinced by this child. He looked thin and small. Where did he come from, such a good spirit? He frowned and asked, why is this child so difficult to take care of? Xiaoling was a little nervous. It's easy to take care of him. He's just a little bored. He stopped crying quickly by playing games with the nanny. She was very afraid that Pei Xian would dislike the child and drive him out of the house. Pei Xian saw her cautious look and unexpectedly remembered what Grandma Ye said to him when they were on the terrace just now, this is all life, Xiaoling's life, and your life. He looked at her and the child, his eyes darkening slightly. The nanny was still teasing the child hard, but she was a female nanny after all. After teasing for a while, she lost strength and could not continue to lift the child high, so the child started crying again. Xiaoling was a little worried. What should I do? If I keep crying like this, my throat will be damaged. Pei Xian glanced at her and stepped forward. Xiaoling's heart was in her throat, and she didn't know what he was going to do. The nanny stopped teasing the child. She respectfully held the child in her arms and stood in front of him. She bowed timidly, Mr. This nanny has helped take care of the children of many wealthy families, and has met many big shots, but for some reason, she is instinctively afraid of Pei Xian, as if this man has more power than other wealthy bosses and cannot be offended. Pei Xian looked at the child in her arms. With a cold face, he said to the child, don't cry. The little child looked at him and was slightly stunned. Somehow, he really stopped crying. The little baby stared at Pei Xian with some curiosity. He had never seen this nominal father a few times. It was very new. After looking at him for a while, he seemed to recognize who he was, just like the last time he was in the baby room. Grinning stupidly, Zhou's mother on the side watched them interact and was very pleased. Although, from the perspective of the Pei family's maid, she was very opposed to Xiaoling having a child with another man and framing the blame on Pei Xian. However, from a woman's perspective, she likes this baby very much. Since she has been raised in the Pei family, she naturally hopes that the baby and her husband can live in harmony. Always feel like a family. At this time, seeing the baby smiling at Pei Xian, Zhou's mother hurriedly stepped forward and said jokingly, Mr. is still awesome, so many of us can't coax the baby, but you just need to say a gentle word and he will really stop crying. Pei Xian's expression softened slightly. The little baby didn't know who he had inherited it from. He was stupid and could grin when he saw anyone, no matter how dangerous he was. His ability to observe people's emotions was amazing. After he finished laughing, he found the tall man in front of him. He didn't seem to be unhappy, so he stretched out his hand more and more, mumbling something unknown in his mouth. Zhou's mother smiled and said to Pei Xian, the baby wants you to hold it. Xiaoling stood up nervously, let me hug you. She was afraid that he would hurt the child. Pei Xian originally didn't want to hug the little guy, he was just a scoundrel, what qualifications did he have to let him hug him? However, when he caught a glimpse of Xiaoling's appearance, he changed his mind, wasn't she guarding him like a thief? Then he really wanted to give her a hug, so that she could know who was the real master of the family. He reached out his hand and took the baby. I'll come. Xiaoling was anxious and wanted to the child away. Pei Xian glanced at her lightly, his eyes seemed to contain a huge pressure and a silent warning. Xiaoling didn't dare to move any more, and watched anxiously as he held the child steady little by little under Zhou's mother's guidance. This is the first time Pei Xian has held such a small baby. It is softer than expected. The soft little guy nestled in his arms obediently, looking at him with a pair of round eyes open. At this moment, Pei Xian felt an unprecedented nervousness, fearing that he might accidentally hold the little guy in his arms uncomfortably or fall. His movements were stiff and cautious. Before he could hold her for long, his arm muscles were sore due to excessive tension. The little baby in his arms was unaware of his nervousness and stiffness, and still smiled at him innocently. It's strange to say that he cries when others hold him, and sometimes he even cries in Xiaoling's arms, but he always smiles brightly at Pei Xian, with an unguarded look on his face. The little baby stretched out his hand to grab the buttons of Pei Xian's suit. Pei Xian became even more nervous, his face tightened, and he looked deeper and unpredictable than usual. Xiaoling was afraid that he would turn against the baby, so she quickly walked over, gently held the baby's hand, and said softly, "Baby, be good, don't move around," because she had to hold on to him. Her body was close to Pei Xian's. Very close, the breeze was ruffling her hair, falling on Pei Xian's chest, and there was a faint fragrance. She hasn't approached Pei Xian like this for a long time. Pei Xian's body became stiffer, his heart beat erratically, and every cell in his body was screaming for surprise. Xiaoling didn't notice, she stayed in his arms and coaxed the baby gently. Pei Xian lowered his head and looked at her. The baby looked at his mother curiously, then at Pei Xian. Looking like a harmonious family of three. Besides, the two nannies taking care of the baby felt that they were wrong. Before, they suspected that the child was not Pei Xian's biological child, but how could it not be? Mr. Pei is so good to his children, and his children seem to like Mr. Pei so much. We can't deny the relationship between father and son just because they don't see much similarity in appearance. Who would be so kind to a child who is not their own? This child must be the husband's biological child, for sure. Zhou's mother, who knew the inside story, was also very happy. She has always been worried that the relationship between husband and wife will be broken because of this child's life experience. Now it seems that it is actually possible to repair it. It makes sense when you think about it. My husband has adopted Miss Xiaoling and Miss Xiaoyu before. In fact, he does not object to raising children who are not his own by his side, and he can get along well with the children. If that is the case, there is still a possibility for the three members of the family to be harmonious. When the wife gets better and gives birth to another child, the family will be complete. The more she thought about it, the more wonderful Zhou's mother felt, and she secretly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. In the end, Xiaoling took the baby from Pei Xian's hand and freed his arm, which was so stiff that it was so stiff. The baby was held by his mother, but his eyes never left Pei Xian. The smile on his face was pure, innocent, and happy. Let Pei Xian's heart soften. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 480. Chapter 480. The baby's name. From that day on, whenever he saw Pei Xian, the baby would reach out to him to hold him. He likes the buttons on Pei Xian's high-end handmade custom-made suits and takes great pleasure in them. He also likes to rub his saliva on Pei Xian's body. He almost ruins the suit just by hugging him once. Pei Xian didn't mind. He even quit smoking secretly because he was afraid that the smell of cigarette smoke would smell to the baby. Two men, one big and one small, are getting along day by day. Xiaoling felt relieved when she saw that the two of them were getting along well. As long as the baby could be liked by Pei Xian, the baby's safety would be guaranteed. There was nothing more important than this. Xiaoling thanked Grandma Ye. It was Grandma Ye's appearance that brought about a turn for the better. Grandma Ye chose a sunny afternoon to chat with Xiaoling. She asked Xiaoling about the child's life experience. Xiaoling didn't hide anything. She told Grandma Ye what she could and told her that the child's biological father was indeed someone else. Grandma Ye said, "Xiaoling, Grandma knows that you are as miserable as Mr. Pei. You have been thinking about another man in your heart. However, Women will always marry chickens and dogs in this life, and Mr. Pei is already the best among people is good to you. Even if there are small shortcomings, you should be content. Now that you are taking your child with him, you should live well and don't compete with yourself or fate. Xiaoling was silent for a while and nodded slightly. Grandma Ye praised her and said, "This is a good boy." She patted her shoulder and left with a cane. Under the brick wall covered with ivy and roses, Pei Zion stood and listened quietly to their conversation. He didn't eavesdrop on purpose, but when he was passing by, he happened to catch them talking about himself and couldn't help but stop. He heard Grandma Ye advising Xiaoling and saw Xiaoling nodding. At that moment, he was so elated that it was like the whole world became bright. He knew that his Xiaoling would come back one day. Pei Zion's expression softened as he watched her send Grandma Ye away, holding the baby in her arms, sitting alone on the half-height flower wall and singing a self-composed children's song. It sounds very good and makes him intoxicated. The singing was intermittent and gradually stopped. Pei Zion asked warmly, "Why don't you sing?" Xiaoling was startled and turned around, only to see him under the flower wall. He stood in the shadow of the bluestone steps, raised his head slightly to look at him, his eyebrows were handsome and gentle. So Xiaoling turned around and continued humming children's songs intermittently. Pei Zion walked to her side, sat down side by side with her, and looked down at the baby in her arms. The little baby looked particularly happy nestled in her mother's arms, waving her short arms and legs as if she wanted to dance to the melody. When he saw Pei Zion, he was not afraid and waved even more vigorously. "When you grow up, you can probably become a king." Pei Zion looked at him and said. Xiaoling was even more surprised. She didn't expect that Pei Zion would take the initiative to talk about his children. This is probably a good thing, right? She was quiet for a moment and then smiled slightly. "Well, hello, King of Heaven, I will be a star all my life and make music happily." This child is destined to have no chance of inheriting the Pei family. Although he was Pei Zion's nominal eldest son, both of them knew very well about his bloodline. If this child wants to seize power in the future, there will be only one way out. The best way out is to do something else, not involved in business. Pei Zion agreed very much, just sign it to the emperor, and his younger brother can support him in the future. Xiaoling was startled for a moment, and then she remembered that she had promised Pei Zion that she would give him a child. Her mood dropped inexplicably, and she smiled reluctantly. Pei Zion looked down at the child in her arms. The baby smiled happily, waving its little hands and feet, and looked at him with a pair of clear and bright eyes. "The child hasn't been named yet," Pei Zion said gently, "let's call him Pei Yin. Xiao means inheritance, and Yin means music." As early as the beginning of Xiaoling's pregnancy, when Pei Zion thought the child was his own, he had already thought of a name for the child. Originally, it was decided that Pei Shi would inherit the family business. Now, this child cannot inherit the family business no matter what. It is better to call him Pei Yin so that he can recognize his identity and inherit Xiaoling's singing talent in the future and become a superstar. Xiaoling's mood was a little complicated. He said, "Let the child's surname be Pei." What a concession this is, and how much forbearance and recognition it represents. At this moment, she finally believed that Pei Zion loved her again. If it weren't for love, how could he tolerate having someone else's child raised in his name as his eldest son? "Thank you." She had nothing to say in return, only feeling that this thank you was feeble. Pei Zion's expression became gentler. "In the future, we must let them live in harmony as brothers." What he was talking about was his future flesh and blood, and he wanted to get along well with the child in front of him and rely on each other. Just like Grandma Ye said, it would be a good idea to leave a helping hand to her future heirs. Xiaoling lowered her head, the gratitude in her heart dissipated little by little. Even if he loves her, so what? It's still overbearing and forced love. If it weren't for his obstruction, the child would be raised by Lilei's side now, and the family of 3 would be enjoying themselves happily. Perhaps, the child will inherit Tianyi in the future and inherit the good skills of his biological father. She looked at the swaddled baby. The little baby was carefree and still babbling and laughing in her arms. She suddenly thought that what he inherited should not be music, but I think it's better to call him Xiaowai, the glorious Hui. Xiaoling raised her head and looked at Pei Ziyan carefully. Pei Shayin sounds just like Wei Shayin. Xiaowai is not bad either, inherit the glory, just like. She raised her head and looked at the warm sun in the winter afternoon, so great weather, such nice Sunday. Just like the man in her heart, Lilei, her eternal sunshine. Pei Ziyan didn't know what she was really thinking, so he just raised his head and looked at the warm winter sunshine with her. The warm, golden, and clear sunshine shone on his body, which was very comfortable. The faint fragrance of flowers was carried by the wind, which was a rare piece. Okay, let's call him Pei Xiaowai, Pei Ziyan said. Xiaoling really smiled. Well, Xiaowai, what a good name. Now that the child's name has been decided, Xiaoling has settled a worry. The next step was to apply for a household registration and register my name. The servants assisted me in handling these matters, which went smoothly. Soon, the name was announced. All fans know that her and Pei Ziyan's baby has a name, Pei Xiaowai. This is indeed a nice name. Everyone who heard it said it was good and praised and blessed it. Some media interviewed Xiaoling. Xiaoling smiled and said, well, Pei Ziyan and I picked it up together. I hope it has a good meaning. So everyone praised them for their harmonious music. After adjusting the chapters, there are still many complaints about confusing chapters. It is probably because the system has not been updated. You can try removing the books from the bookshelf and adding them back, and it should be fine. Mainly because there were too many updates today. I was so funny that I set the scheduled release of more than 20 chapters in the early morning, went to bed, and woke up in the afternoon when I saw that the chapter at 8 o'clock in the morning was wrong. I was completely confused. One step was wrong and one step was wrong, and I burst into tears. I will never do that again in the future. End of this chapter.